Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video. And this is I'm doing just a little bit of level 2 AC charging at home. In the meantime, I wanted to just try to dovetail a little bit of a plug side chat in here because InsideEVs posted an article recently. They were referencing AlixPartners saying that we've overbuilt EV battery production. And I'm just going to come out and no, we haven't. Now, I get what they're saying, right? They're saying that right now, the current EV battery production in North America, in Europe, in China, is all multiple times the current demand for EVs. Now, what I think we need to recognize, though, first and foremost, is we are seeing a global slowdown, right, in the economy. It's not just, we're feeling some pains here in the United States, but it's not just the United States. What's been going on with the United States and our current administration is having reverberations across the entire global economy, right? So there is an impact there, and I'm going to keep saying that, right? It's not just that demand for EVs has been reduced, it's that demand for cars has been reduced, and it's going to continue to be that way until working class people who buy cars are actually making enough money to feel confident enough to make that kind of a purchase, because outside of a home, you're still looking at the single biggest consumer, private purchase that an individual will typically make in their life. It's an automobile. It's actually a significant chunk of change. People are paying, half as much, sometimes almost as much as they make in a year, just for the car that they buy, which is crazy, but some people do that. So what I'm saying with that is I don't think that the slacking demand that we're seeing in EVs is representative of the demand for EVs, all other things being equal. And so with that in mind, because I think they said AlixPartners had reduced their guidance for how much they saw purchases being represented by EV sales, right? I think at one point they were looking at over 30%, they thought, by 2030, right? Or almost 40% by 2030. And so if you reduce the number of EVs that are being bought, obviously you don't need as many batteries. And then, of course, China in particular, they're producing 5 times as many batteries as they're using in EVs right now. So yeah, that's a significant ratio that's out of whack. But we also have to understand that China is opening up markets in areas where they normally probably wouldn't have opened up markets. And there are a lot of countries that are traditionally extremely oil rich that could still be making that transition to electrification for the same reasons we've done it in so many other countries, right? Is that it just makes more sense from a consumer perspective to drive an electric vehicle, even when gas and oil are plentiful and cheap, right? So one of the conversation points that they had made in that AlixPartners is that EVs still aren't cheap enough to compel the adoption rates that we would need to see to justify the current battery production capacity. And that is an area I do agree, right? Its purchase price is probably the single biggest factor that's affecting how many EVs are being sold. But we're seeing those prices drop. But even then, I would say that we are going to, at least for the foreseeable future, need to have battery production capacity exceed current or forecasted demand for EVs, at least short term. And this is why I was saying what we saw with Ford with their pullback, and now there's possibly just canceling the Lightning. The thing that happened with Ford was the thing that I had warned against, and it was the reason I thought that GM's strategy was better. So when GM was catching all of this crap from all of these EV advocates about, oh, they're canceling their electric plans, they're killing the EV again, they were just building battery factories and battery production capacity, and they were just doing their own thing, while their corporate reputation was getting besmirched for not full-throatedly supporting EVs, and for not producing EVs with last generation tech like so many of these other legacy automakers were. They built the battery facilities first. They built the capacity to build EVs first. And that's how it's kind of got to be, right? Because if you want to scale up EV production, you can't do that unless you have batteries. And this is what I'd said, sitting in this 2017 Chevrolet Bolt EV, this is what I've said for a long time. We know that the reason they only sold 25,000 of them the first couple of years is because they were only getting enough batteries to build 25,000 of them a year. So you can't sell what you can't build, right? And so GM, I think, recognized it from that experience. I mean, that was 2017, their Barclays presentation, when they said they were going to build their Ultium factories and they were going to start producing their own cells and their own batteries. Well, that was all a result of seeing how constrained they were based on relying on third-party battery production. And so right now, I think they said that the current ratio is the domestic, in the U.S. domestic battery production is something like 2 times current EV demand. Well, again, we know that the new Bolt is coming out soon, and it could very likely be one of Chevrolet and GM's best EV sellers. They already kind of anticipated that in the press release, that the new Bolt and the Equinox EV would represent most of their EV sales. But that alone is not going to absorb the 2-to-1 ratio, right, that we're out of whack. That can only come with, I think, an even wider spread adoption of EVs. But I'll also say this, right? We're looking at EVs still stabilizing, oscillating around that 10% new car sales in North America and in the United States. And so if they're only 10%, right, and you're saying that we're currently capable of producing 2 times as many EV batteries as there is demand for EVs, right, to be sold, well, that means that right now our current ability to produce EV batteries would only support a 20% adoption rate. So we're still barely out of the early adopter phase at that point. We're barely even scraping into that early majority. And another number I think people forget is the attrition rate for vehicles that are on the road. So the attrition rate alone for vehicles that are no longer roadworthy and taken out of licensing and service for road use is more than our current capability of building EVs, right? When you're talking about new car sales being like 14, 15, 16 million, that's mostly just covering the attrition, right? Maybe another 20% past that or 25% past that is new people who haven't bought a car before now buying a car, right? Or it's not to replace a car, it's to be added to a household of cars. So the current EV sales don't even come close to replacing the cars that need to be replaced each year through accidents, through age, through whatever other reasons they're taken off the roads, off the market. So if all we've got is the production capacity for twice what we're currently selling, that ain't even close. I mean, in fact, if China, if all they've got is 5 times, that isn't even enough. Now, I know that we're looking to see more and more siloed global markets in terms of technology like that, where just because it's produced in China doesn't mean that it will make it to the US. But China has other emerging markets, like I said, that they're working with. Africa, South America, parts of Europe, parts of Asia. So China doesn't need to sell its batteries here, and even their current 5 times production rate. There's a lot of other uses for those batteries, energy storage, things like that. And the cells that are coming out of China, many of those cells are designed to be used for other projects. You know, I just featured recently a DIY battery kit that I made from EVE using EVE Chinese-made prismatic LFP cells. That's the types of cells that they're making, right? The CATL that we believe are going to go into the new Bolt, those can be used in other projects, whether it be conversions or battery energy storage. The sky's the limit. So it's not just EV single purpose. So the Chinese 5-to-1 ratio of batteries being produced per, the EV demand or sales, that might still be an exaggeration. And then in the United States, like I said, if the best we can do right now is produce enough batteries to support a 20% new car EV adoption rate, it's not even close to enough. So yeah, I would push back severely on this concept of having built too many EV battery factories. And in fact, here's the other thing that I think we need to consider. It used to be that you built just as many batteries as you were going to use because you knew that the batteries that you were building were never going to be more expensive than at the time you were currently building them, right? If you look at the old Chevy Volt, close to $1,000 per finished kilowatt hour. It's expensive to build those cells and build those batteries. But we've gotten to the point now where, with competition for materials, demand for materials, building production facility costs, costs of labor, costs of transportation, we might have gotten to the point now where it's never going to be cheaper to build batteries than it is right now. And if that's the case, these automakers and these battery production facilities, they might want to just keep ramping up even if the EV sales don't necessarily align with their current production values, because those batteries still do have a shelf life. And if a battery that you can produce for $50 per kilowatt hour today is going to cost you $60 or $70 per kilowatt hour in a year or two, it might be worth it to build now. Like I said, this is sort of that counterintuitive thing that you even see it in the corporate world, where when there's a recession, when there's a downturn in the economy, that's when the healthiest businesses try to acquire talent, because you get the most qualified people for the lowest wage, and you get to train them up at a period of time where their production capacity isn't as important as it will be in a year or 2 years from now. So yeah, I think this is maybe a little bit of Chicken Little, sky is falling. Realistically, yeah, I think they still just need to hit the accelerator, at least in terms of ramping up the ability to produce more batteries, even if they're going to keep those assembly lines idle for 6 months, a year and a half. If they know that there will eventually be a demand for those batteries, they should be building ahead of that demand. So yeah, I really do disagree with this concept that we've built too many EV battery factories. Like I said, if all we can support maximum is a 20% uptake of new cars as EVs, we're nowhere near where our battery production facilities need to be, especially when we also look at other markets in terms of conversions, DIY, energy storage. All there's sky's the limit in terms of the use of these battery cells. So we should not be hitting the brakes right now on our battery production. So, all right, well, I'm going to need to hit the road to go pick up the little kiddos, and let me know what you think. Do you think we've overbuilt EV battery facilities? Do you think we're producing too many batteries for our own good and that we'll never be able to use them all? As always, thank you for watching.